let me get your coat. Let's raise a glass to toast to all those good goals.
It's Tuesday. It is 2/22/22, the 22nd of February of 2022. Welcome to Real Talk. Jesperson here with you. Hoyles and Brooks along this week. Jenny Adams joining me in studio today, which I'm excited about. We're teeing up another edition of our group chat roundtable. It's been a while since we've had the band together, and we've got a lot to talk about. If you were mapping it out, if you were sort of like being the Sarah Hoyles here, the editorial producer, and providing the roadmap for where you thought we should take our conversation on federal, provincial, and maybe even municipal politics, what would you lead with on this Tuesday?
Obviously, the Emergencies Act.
That's
and
the
I'm in a mood today. I'm in a bit of a bad mood.
Oh, yes!
Yeah, you forced me to put Twitter back on my phone
What?
in anticipation of being on the show.
Don't
and
blame
so I
me
was
for
on
that
it
one.
last night. I was on it this morning, and now I'm just grumpy. And so obviously, I think the Emergencies Act, there's things to talk about there.
You and I correspond from time to time on matters of importance, and when you told me a while ago that you were pulling Twitter off your phone, I didn't actually believe you. You really did that?
I have. I've stuck my head in the sand at probably a terrible time to stick my head in the sand. But I think, like most Canadians, people are all over the world, I'm at my capacity of things to be worried about, concerned about. And at a certain point, I guess it's more responsible to take a look at what's going around and actually make a stand for something and have an opinion.
Yeah. Holy smokes. I just dropped in on our live chat for like 10 seconds, and I saw something that's just, like life just gives you perspective checks. We have Positive Reflections coming up later on today by Kuby Energy, and there's an email from Bonnie, and it is what a perspective check it is. It's amazing. But look, what about this? Like right now here, I see that an audience member chimes in, and everyone's saying hi to each other this morning, right? So it's the chat's getting bumped down really quick. But she said, my ex-husband died last week, and I don't know what to feel. Wow. You never know what somebody's walking with, right? What an amazing thing. What a perspective check. We're talking about whether or not, the reason I bring this up, I mean, there's a lot of reasons too. We're getting back together and catching up after a long weekend, but there's a lot of talk about Canada being broken or Canada being divided. And we're hearing about it a lot from politicians. And I think to a certain degree, we have some Y Station polling we'll show later on today. It demonstrates that Canadians are feeling angsty and maybe a little bit divided. But do you believe the nation is divided?
I think we're being used, all of us, by every level of government, and this is what I want to talk about today when we get our friends on, by politicians to divide us. And I think, it's time we take a look around at what's actually going on. Look at, all the Twitter likes and the retweets and everything that we apparently care about as politicians are using us to get reelected to make a stand on things that obviously lots of this matters, but also like look at the text that you just got. Like real life things are happening to real Canadians. And anyway, we'll have a bigger conversation when Harman and Katherine get on here. If they're not too late. But
Rose is wondering, where is Sarah Hoyles? Sarah Hoyles is working out of her home studio like she has been for the last, what's it been? I think, Sam, she's been there for like 4 months now. So Sarah's good.
I'm in the office next door.
Jenny's here.
I just literally, I'm on the other side
Hoyles
of the wall.
is here.
So hi, Sarah.
There's video evidence that Sarah Hoyles is with us this morning and doing a great job. We got a lot of ground to cover. Let me remind you, of course, that a part of this passage of the Emergencies Act, there are financial implications, including, Sam, you were 100% bang on. Man, trust your instincts. You know what's up. You nailed it. I was just talking to Adam O'Brien last night, quickly, CEO of Bitcoin Well, and he's like, here we go. I said, what's up? He goes, well, take a look at one of these things. He says the custodial crypto exchanges, the ones that kind of like keep your money for you, they tell you how much crypto you have, but I shouldn't say money, but they tell you how much you have, but they're holding it. It's custodial. They're impacted by this Emergencies Act, or at least potentially. There's about 1 million angles we can talk about. Cryptocurrency factors into conversation about the Emergencies Act. If you have questions about it, you know where I'm going to tell you to go. Go where I go when I have questions. Bitcoin Well. You'll find them on the sponsors page on our website, ryanjesperson.com.
Real Talk starts right now. Here's Ryan Jesperson.
So we call it the group chat roundtable. This is a roundtable that has manifested itself and even on different media platforms. Basically, it is what it is. This is a group of people that throughout the course of a day, and sometimes we take entire days or weeks off if we don't want to talk to or hear from one another. We have a group chat that we keep the contents of it private and confidential, but it's people with some political experience, some savviness, I think, people whose perspectives I appreciate, and we chat about matters of politics and life, and sometimes we go on the record. And so Jenny Adams joining me here in the Real Talk studio. She's principal of a do you say a boutique communications firm called the Adams Agency, and
Works. Yep.
you do everything from you like throw big events.
Well, let's
You
not
brought
start
Brian-
with events. Yeah, we
But-
do a lot of reputation and crisis work. We do a lot of public engagement work. We do a lot of how you communicate with stakeholders and get people to understand what's going on. And then we do a lot of fun things as well, although I find that really fun. And we're bringing in big names and talent and kind of getting eyeballs and impressions on different things. So
I was
kind
going
of
to say you're a
gamut.
crisis comms expert,
We
right?
do a lot of crisis
Like when
work.
people
We
are-
don't talk a lot about it because
Well,
people
you
don't want to
can't,
know.
and I won't ask you about it.
But you have my phone number on speed dial, don't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, you're the type of person that like is on someone's call
Speed
list
dial.
when they're in the shit, basically.
Yeah.
So that's the Adams Agency, crisis comms, and reputation and brand management. Fascinating perspective. Harman Kandola is joining us. You've seen Harman on the show before many times. A lawyer with SBLLP. My friend, it's great to see you again. He's been a candidate for the Progressive Conservatives provincially. He's been a city council candidate, ran a strong campaign, a tough loss. Harman, maybe we'll get into that. Who knows? This past time that Edmontonians went to the polls, he works with the World Sikh Organization, a VP there, and of course Edmonton's Anti-Racism Committee. And then Katherine O'Toole, our good pal, rounding out our conversation today. Of course, Katherine quite prominently doing just an incredible job as the CEO of YWCA Edmonton, also past president of the Progressive Conservative, what do you say, PCAA, Association of Alberta, KO? That was right? The PC party, past president, and of course a former journalist, including a war correspondent with the Globe and Mail, was last with us on our unbelievable Remembrance Day episode, KO. What an unbelievable conversation that was. Good morning to the three of you. The Emergencies Act passed in the House of Commons. The Liberals see it passed with the support of the NDP. The Conservatives say, quite frankly, it's a mistake. They're not getting behind it. Harman, what do you think? I mean, the Ottawa occupation has been kind of, I don't know if you say dissipating or bulldozed out by police, but does it make sense here?
You know, I spent the last 2 weeks traveling kind of across the Middle East, West Africa, and this occupation has been the number one thing that people ask me about. It was kind of shocking, but, you know, Canada has definitely taken a hit on the international level when it comes to its reputation in dealing with this occupation. And so, you know, the invocation of the Emergency Act, while I think may not have been unexpected, I think the failure of the government to articulate why the current apparatus has failed and why they need to actually use the Emergency Act is what really bothers a lot of people. I know from, you know, being from a minority community, you know, we're very, very deeply concerned by the invocation and the lack of kind of justification of why the current machinery of the state failed. And, you know, what we saw is a clear, you know, difference in terms of how, you know, police and enforcement have dealt with, you know, different types of, you know, actions and protests. So, you know, while I understand that they wanted to use the Emergency Act, yeah, the need has dissipated. Absolutely. I think this is something now, you know, in search of a problem, and people are rightly concerned about overreach. They're rightly concerned about how this is going to be wielded. Obviously there's some, you know, there's difficulty online of people using exaggeration and rumors to suggest that this has been used in ways that it has not. But that's what you open yourself up to when you give yourself the power to do, you know, to basically have state overreach. Yeah, there's going to be issues in communication. And I think this government has failed to communicate the need for this. And it's failed to really establish why the state has failed in dealing with the protests. So, you know, a lot of people are definitely concerned in the World Sikh Organization. We're concerned about the invocation of the Emergencies Act, and we want to see it lifted as soon as possible.
Harman, in the context of your role with the World Sikh Organization, what specifically would the organization be concerned about here?
So I think one of the biggest things is that the potential for overreach, right? And, you know, especially in the past where we've seen, you know, this protest versus previous protests by racialized minorities and vulnerable peoples is the clear difference and the deference that was paid to these protesters by police. You know, even where you saw clear threats, you know, you know, we saw at the Coutts border where you had, you know, ammunition, weapons that were discovered, active threats. yet we still saw police officers engage in pleasantries with protesters. There is a clear contrast in the way that this country has dealt with protesters. And there is worry that now the Emergency Act will be used in a manner against those racialized minorities in the future when it comes to, protests. And so that's the biggest concern. And the World Support Organization actually issued a press release last week expressing our concern around these issues.
KO, where do you land on the Emergencies Act? I know some people are saying, downtown Ottawa, there's some movement again. There's still a lot of fences and barriers up, obviously a heavy police presence. Someone sent me a link today earlier that shows that some demonstrators have relocated into a field in Ontario, and they're gathering again, and there are rumors that there are other planned actions. The point being, some are suggesting this is far from over. The federal government doesn't yet have a handle on this. Others are saying the Emergencies Act passing now, kind of like the wave has passed. What's going on? Where are you at?
What Harman said, I echo a lot what he said as far as the fact that this is an extraordinary measure. And if you're going to take an action like this, you need to show your work. You need to build trust about why government has made such an extraordinary decision. And it's the first time it's ever been used. And I hope it's the last time it is ever used in our lifetime, because of the fact it gives government so many sweeping powers that are, quite frankly, make people quite nervous. And, when you look at all these new people making allegations about banks, having special powers and going after donors to the trucker convoy that have been unproven. Things like that make people rightfully nervous. And so I think we are, they have dislodged that big part of the occupation. Yes, there's still a threat, but I think now is the time to go back to the regular policing that, in Toronto, when they had a truck convoy came in, they were able to handle it because they were prepared, they were ready, and they had a strategy. Unfortunately, leading up to what happened in Ottawa, a lot of people failed along the way. Provincial governments, policing forces, municipal governments. It was just a complete colossal failure of leadership. We got to a point where we needed this extraordinary measure. I think the major danger is past, and I think it's time to put away this tool and go back to our regular laws and hope that they work this time. I do see why the feds would be mistrustful that the police can handle this because of what we just saw for the last 3 weeks. But we need to, if you're going to do these extraordinary measures, you need to be open to extraordinary pressure and extraordinary people asking a lot of difficult questions, because this is just a lot for our country to see. And as Harman said, we're being watched around the world about how we're handling this.
I think, Katherine, that you're missing the biggest failure of leadership, and that's from the Prime Minister. Like, where has he been from the very beginning? I'm sorry, but he's been hiding with his head in the sand. He fueled the fire back in middle of January, and now he's been hiding with his head in the sand for political gain. Well, Canadians
everybody's doing it for.
I know, no, but
everybody
is doing it for political
Sure.
gain. But the Ottawa police all along have said they need more resources. They were able to get rid of the Coots protest, the Ambassador Bridge, without the Emergencies Act. They needed resources. Where were the resources? Where was the Prime Minister standing up and saying that this was not okay and figuring out a way and showing leadership? Michael Chong, the MP, I'm not sure where he's the MP for,
Ontario.
but yeah,
if you don't know, just say Ontario.
Just Ontario. He did an amazing speech yesterday, and I would, go take a listen to that. And he talks about the rule of law and how democracy is built around the rule of law. And there was laws that could have been used to freeze bank accounts. That didn't need the Emergencies Act.
Mm-hmm.
To make these go away, it didn't need the Emergencies Act.
But you can't give. First of all, I hope Michael Chong seeks the CPC leadership. I hope.
Same.
I hope that the party doesn't pass on him twice. I think he'd be a great leader. But I also think that it's kind of comical for you, my friend, to crack on. And I'm not here to jump to the defense of the Liberals nor the Prime Minister. I was hard on the Prime Minister in a tweet a while ago, too. I'm just saying, to say that, the Liberals talk about law and order. I mean, the Conservatives have been the ones posing for selfies and bringing coffee to the occupiers. So nobody's
Cooper,
been the party of law and order in this one.
Jason Kenney, now saying he's going to go and we're going to fight against the Emergencies Act. We've got, local city councilors who are throwing Rice Krispie squares at protesters. Like, everybody is using this. Everybody somebody is using this for their own political gain while Canadians are being torn apart. And that's what the question is that you asked me, right off the hop. And I do think it's a shame that, so many people are scared, are worried, are concerned. And these are our fellow Canadians that we need to talk to and have conversations with, rather than just looking for the next Twitter like and the next retweet as we're talking in those echo chambers. Lots of things are happening with Canadians today, and we've got major issues, and I'm just really sick of the politics around it all. I'm really sick of it.
Yeah, it's a dangerous time to really pile on in this mistrust of all of our institutions. People don't trust their government right now. They don't trust their law enforcement right now. They don't trust these fundamental pillars of our democracy. And yes, we're rightfully so should be asking questions, but when politicians are making political hay around these things at such a volatile, dynamic time, it's really dangerous, and you're threatening to burn the whole house down if you keep piling on in this way. And it makes me really, really concerned about the future of Canada post-pandemic when you're seeing such a mistrust. People are so cynical. They've lost faith in all of these institutions, and that's not a good thing for our country.
Can you stitch it back together? Harman, do you get the sense that this is a country that can be stitched back together?
I think when you see conservative politicians kind of start playing to the lowest common denominator and amplifying groups that they know and they're aware of have, conspiratorial theories that they're now trying to perpetuate on the public. I mean, let's remember, we're not asking a lot of people when it comes to what they needed to do during this pandemic right now, right? Wear a mask. It's not hard. I was in West Africa. And these are a lot of countries that were not touched in the same way by COVID as Canada was, and they have no problem wearing masks. Everybody's wearing masks wherever they go. They wear masks. It's not that hard. I'm just shocked that conservative politicians know better than anyone else. A lot of the fringe groups that exist in this protest, and yet there they were, now trying to claim that there's some legitimacy to these concerns, these desires, these requests, when absolutely when it started, there was not. Now you saw this, convergence of multiple different groups with different interests. And I think that becomes the problematic piece, because they've enabled this convergence. They've enabled these people to come together and now start to share a platform, which has led to this, what they now themselves are calling a division in Canada. They're perpetuating that division by amplifying the differences and by giving fringe groups the voice that they want. And so I think for Canadians, it's a failure at a political level. Yeah, does Trudeau deserve some criticism? Absolutely. Yesterday, Jagmeet Singh going along with the Prime Minister in passing the Emergencies Act, absolutely concerning. I think he's shown himself to be completely powerless in situations like this, or being able to advocate or even hold the Prime Minister accountable. So a complete failure and abdication of leadership across the board from the entire spectrum. And it's very disappointing. And it's time that we hold every politician, but in particular those who are giving the space to extremists and extreme fringe groups responsible. That's the only way we stitch this back together.
I'm just dropping it on the live chat here. Tracy says Coots would still be going if those guns were not found. That's a fact. I agree with Tracy. There was also an interesting comment here. Someone said, who was it? I'm sorry, I lost the comment, but somebody said the country is not divided. Conservatives are divided. That was Sandra that said that. That's an interesting comment. Somebody else talking about, Scott says, read the comments sections, Facebook groups, stuff online. Many who supported the convoy are going full-blown conspiracy theory. Wanted to let you know that's the subject of our Friday Real Talk Roundtable this week, conspiracy theories. We're not going to dig into them and see which ones are true. We're going to talk how they get to where they're at, how they spread, and why people are more susceptible to them, or at least is that the way it seems as of late. Listen, we've got 10 more minutes with this crew, and we got to keep the conversation moving quickly. Jenny, you contributed to, you worked on, I should say, Peter MacKay's leadership campaign and the latest conservative leadership
But not
race.
in the communications. I just want to say that had nothing to do with that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, it's always interesting when somebody doesn't win, and then everybody that worked on their campaign
No,
wants
I was
to
saying it
clarify.
during. I was saying it during. Like, I have nothing to do with whatever they're doing.
Okay. You think he's going to run again, by the way?
I don't know if he is going to run again. Is it to help pay off his debt? I heard an incredible rumor, and I really don't think it's true, but I heard that the Mulrooney's were trying to stoke Ben into running for leadership. And how interesting would that be if you had Ben Mulroney versus Justin Trudeau?
Wow.
That would be, but I mean, I can't see it actually happening, but I thought that was a really fun rumor.
Let's talk about the Conservative leadership. It's we're going to get into this a little bit later in our Real Talk question of the week when we review the results. The majority of Real Talkers at this point, obviously, who else are you going to say, suspect that Pierre Poilievre will be the next leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. Do you think that's the case? I'd put money on it. I mean, if I was betting, if I had to bet on one horse.
Yeah, well, you have to understand I'm a really jaded political volunteer, right?
Okay.
So now I know how this works. And like in my dream world, no, we have a much more progressive conservative leader, like a Michael Chong or like, a Peter MacKay, somebody who's a lot more progressive, so we can actually start pandering to the center of Canadians, which is what I think Canada really needs. But that's not how you win leadership.
The party's swinging further right.
Yeah, and it's so disheartening, and it's just not how you win. So, will he win? I don't know. I guess we'll see what happens.
KO, what do you think's happening with the leadership campaign, and even like sort of like widening or broadening out the question? Do you think the brand is emboldened, strengthened, or damaged after these last few weeks?
Well, I think we're still in the middle of this, so it's hard to tell how this is all gonna, how it's all gonna play out. But I think it's definitely in certain parts of the country, it's quite damaged, and then in other parts of the country, it's been strengthened. But if you're a Conservative right now, you want to strengthen your brand in Ontario and Quebec. And quite frankly, I don't think this helps their brand in those parts of the country where they need to grow support if they want to ever win an election. So it's going to be a fascinating leadership race from the perspective that in the last two, we saw a ton of folks come out and seek the race. We've only seen one candidate so far, and I don't expect there to be many because of the fact that, like Jenny, we know how these things work. And if you see all the money and the party support going in one place, a lot of people get spooked by that and don't come forward and put their name into the race. So I bet you it's going to be a very slim down race. Barring someone huge going into the race, it looks
Ben
like
Mulroney.
Well, who? But actually, like Katherine, who would be the example?
Well, there's people talking about Jean Charest, but that is so yesterday
But
that I
even that,
can't
like,
even imagine.
no.
Like that's just political nerds dreaming that up, and I can't even imagine. A, it would happen, but B,
You're a political nerd, Katherine. You're one of them, right? Yeah.
I am a political nerd.
Everybody watching, and
Everyone
everybody
on it-
tuning in,
and everyone today,
and everybody
we're
talking
all-
right
yeah.
now is all political nerds. It's a compliment.
Yes, it's a complete compliment.
Harman,
But
Harman, what do you think?
Yeah, I've got a name. I've got Patrick Brown. Patrick Brown is the leader the Conservatives need.
Brampton
This
Marion.
man has demonstrated absolutely amazing leadership as the mayor of Brampton. He's taken strong positions on issues like Bill 21, which every single federal leader has failed, absolutely failed the minority communities in this country. Patrick Brown was the sole person who stood up and actually challenged the status quo. He's done a phenomenal job. He was going to be the premier of Ontario. This man knows how to organize. Right now, Pierre Poilievre is the choice.
Nice in Ontario, Harman. He's sorry. I'm just
Pierre Poilievre, choosing Pierre Poilievre is basically the Conservatives showing us that their intent is to compete with Maxime Bernier and not actually try to win an election.
But that's the problem. That's where they think that we need to win is over there.
The math doesn't work.
The math doesn't work.
And so they talk about winning leaderships, but they don't think about winning elections. And I was on the record as somebody who thought, Erin O'Toole needed some more time. This is a guy who basically had his leadership entirely during the period of COVID. But each MP is getting 100 emails a day from a bunch of, anti-maskers, anti-vaxxers, anti-mandate people. And all of a sudden now Pierre Poilievre, they look in the mirror and say, well, he's going to be our savior. Absolutely not. He appeals to such a small group of people. Patrick Brown is the one person who can come in and save the Conservative Party, or at least set them up to be competitive in the next election. The election gets won by the suburbs. It's going to be won by the 905 in Ontario. And the one guy who's shown that he's able to win in those areas is Patrick Brown. Erin O'Toole thought he could deliver the 905. He was not able to.
Harman,
Patrick Brown's
you.
that guy.
I love you. But how many times have you been down this path of choosing a leader you think's going to be really great, and then you understand how it works, and it's all about the ground game, and it's the reason that Jason Kenney's going to win his vote of confidence in a couple of weeks and probably the next election. It's great to have these ideas of who we think will be wonderful, but it all comes down to the nuts and the bolts of how you win these elections and getting out the vote. And there's a machine that exists, and it's really hard to beat if you're not pandering to the really passionate folks who are.
You know how you beat it is you convince all of the lazy everybody's that don't engage
Exactly,
at all.
us.
Because the reason
Yeah.
why you pander to the fringes is because
they
the
come out and
fringes are
vote,
hyper
and they
engaged
sell
and they
memberships.
donate and they say exactly right.
And until we get off our butts and actually do something about it, I'm looking at us.
No, I know you are.
And we actually,
We're
I
doing our
volunteer.
part. We're here today.
I
We're doing our
volunteer.
part.
I was on 7 campaigns for the last election.
You have been. You've been
So
nonstop
Patrick
on.
Brown has done this.
All
Patrick
right,
Brown
Harman.
won a leadership race in Ontario for the PCs. He's been through the gauntlet. He was an outsider in that leadership race. He was a very little known MP who was able to put together a phenomenal campaign. So, he's not the political neophyte who doesn't understand how to do the organizing at the grassroots level. This is a guy who's relevant today. He's relevant on a national scope. Let's look outside of Alberta for options. And if the only person that I see who has a shot of beating the establishment choice of Pierre Poilievre is going to be Patrick Brown. Every conservative leadership race in the last 3 races has gone to somebody who was not the front runner and somebody who's willing to outwork everyone else. And I think Patrick Brown has that ability, and he has the ability to expand the tent for that party. He's the one who set up that victory for Doug Ford, that Doug Ford just basically was able to tap in for the victory. So I think he's somebody to look out for.
So are you going to be on his campaign for Alberta then? Are you chairing it? Is this you telling us right now? Harman?
News.
You're so conservative?
No, this is just me making bold predictions based on what I want to see in politics.
Okay.
I failed last time when I was on, and I talked about how Erin O'Toole was gonna, become prime minister. That was terrible. And I got called out right.
Have you ever won anything?
No.
Just
Poor track
we
record.
were group chat here.
Jeez, yeah, this is.
I've
the
never
part
put my name forward for anything.
just so happens to be consumed by a few more people. Listen, we have 3 minutes left with the 3 of you. KO, I know you've got a meeting starting in just a little bit, and the 2 of you are probably busy with your own thing as well. Jenny can't give us any details. Although Harman, a lawyer, you can't tell us anything either. But let's talk about this real quick. We're talking on a Tuesday. This is live. We're coming up to 9 a.m. Mountain Time. Speech from the throne this week. Alberta legislature's back. And we expect to see a budget on Thursday. Here's like the quick notes, the Coles notes on it is that oil's trading way higher than was budgeted for. It's good news for Alberta, at least in the short term. Record production, 1.3 billion barrels, I think, last year. Record production for Alberta. It looks like Jason Kenney could put out a balanced budget, if not a surplus budget. Is it enough to save his skin? He's got his leadership review coming up, I think, April 9th off the top of my head. And then, of course, next year, Albertans go to the polls. KO, you first. Jason Kenney, let me go on the record first so I'm not swayed by all of your opinions. I think he survives the leadership the leadership review, and I think it's a very real possibility he could be premier again in 2023. KO, what do you think?
I think Jason Kenney's going to have a very good week this week. And for a guy who's had a very bad year, this is going to be the start of, I think, a run for him. And from the perspective of on Thursday, it does look like we're close to having a balanced budget. On Saturday, he's already telegraphed that they're likely going to be getting rid of some of the COVID measures, health measures have been in place for a long time. So he's starting to lay the groundwork for the 2023 election. And, this turnaround with our budget is massive. This is a huge, huge story. When you think about that in 2021, we were projecting like an $18 billion deficit. The fact that we're close to, balancing the books and having maybe even a tiny surplus is very significant. And it will really change the channel, I think, for a lot of Albertans about where we are, the feeling about just the uncertainty, the fact that people have been so, the COVID and the pandemic has just been so difficult for so many people on so many levels. So I think he's going to have a really good week, barring any of his, comments that he says on the podium, because sometimes he gets long-winded and his communications don't come across. But from
and he starts talking about people dying of AIDS or,
not helpful.
Not helpful, most especially for him. Yeah.
If they stick to the script this week, it's going to be a very good week. And I think at the start of this election campaign, it's starting this week.
Harman?
Yeah, I would agree with KO. I think that, conservatives, they love to eat their own, but, having your leader be the best organizer is going to be difficult for anyone to kind of displace Jason Kenney. For so long, his playbook has relied upon externalizing the enemy to Justin Trudeau. And with this week of the passing of the Emergencies Act, he gets to start that whole framework and that whole campaign once again. Justin Trudeau is going to be a threat. That's how we won the last election, is coming up with, this boogeyman that was going to impact Alberta.
Harman, let me step on your toes for a quick second. Does it hurt Jason Kenney, that it's come out. People have become privy to the information that his provincial government had requested help from Ottawa, had requested help from the feds, heavy equipment, funding, personnel. Does that hurt Kenney's argument that Alberta or Canada doesn't need the Emergencies Act and doesn't need Ottawa?
It should. Like theoretically, logically it should, but it's not going to, which is the wild part about this whole thing.
Okay.
That's why Jason Kenney, at the drop of the hat starts a new lawsuit, right? He's just changing the channel. This is now about the Emergencies Act, and it's about nothing that came before it, which is always why this man is able to live continuous lives. He's able to change the channel and continue to set the pace of the agenda of what people are going to talk about. And so I think, given the good news that's going to come out, he'll be able to craft a narrative that's going to be compelling for this next election.
Jenny?
To a fault, I always try and remember remind the group chat that I'm like the everyday average Albertan who's kind of engaged, but not really engaged and kind of paying attention.
Well, you play that person in the group chat.
But I do, and my family lives in rural Alberta, and so what I'm trying to say is that Jason Kenney is speaking to some Albertans. Some Albertans what he has to say.
Sure.
They don't exist on Twitter, but they exist in real life. So this man knows what he's doing, and once you have seen it in action a few times, you would never count him out. I don't think he thinks he's had a really bad year, although it's clear he's had a bad year.
He'd never let on.
No, he'd never let on. He would never apologize. But yeah, certainly I think he wins again, and I think, I'm not sure if he balances the budget this time or maybe saves that for, a year from now when we're flying right into an election. We have to have better news, right before we vote. So
maybe he can do like the Ralph Bucks thing.
Maybe.
If there's a surplus, he can give us all $400.
Maybe he'll make it $500.
Natural gas rebates. So.
Can you imagine? Yeah, no kidding.
I think that they were planning on doing that and just kind of forgot.
Yeah.
But we need that.
That is Jenny Adams, the Adams Agency. That's Harman Kandola of SBLLP and the World Sick Organization, and Katherine O'Toole, CEO of YWCA Edmonton. To the three of you, mwah, thanks for doing this.
Bye, guys.
I'll see you on the group chat. And then you can say what you really think. That was fantastic. Coming up in just a second, we'll get into the results of our most recent Y Station polling, our question of the week. We talk about Erin O'Toole's leadership. We talk about the Conservative Party of Canada's leadership race. We talk about the Ottawa occupation. We're following these stories, and we want to have our finger on the pulse of where you're at. Results plus our new question of the week posted right now under the Connect link at ryanjesperson.com. Hey, today is the kickoff of the Growing the North Conference. I wanted to let you know about this. This is a really, really fantastic opportunity for you to check in, hear from, and network with business and industry leaders, municipal leaders, and entrepreneurs talking economic development opportunities and innovation, specifically in Northwest Alberta. There's 3 half days of learning, sharing, and connecting with industry leaders. This is Northern Alberta's premier economic development conference. It's typically held in Grand Prairie, Alberta. Shout out Grand Prairie, but this year's event, a virtual event, which means that stakeholders across the province, of course, are able to and are welcome to join. You can learn more at growingthenorth.com. Do not delay. You can check out the conference site. You can learn about the roster of speakers and more at growingthenorth.com. Our friends at Athabasca University want to make sure that you know about this new artificial intelligence, the AI ethics micro-credential. This is really neat. You're not doing a bachelor's degree over the next 4 years, but if you want to learn more, get certified, and better understand the ethics of AI, this is part of Power Ed at Athabasca University. So why do you need this certification? Well, it covers the essentials, the basics of how modern AI systems work, the ethical issues that you encounter in the design and deployment of AI, and of course the important role that citizens can play in shaping our AI future. This sounds to me like a pretty good opportunity for people looking to bolster their chances in a new, promising, and competitive job market. You can learn more at powered.athabascau.ca. And if you're like friends of ours, it seems like more and more of them have earned a trip somewhere hot. They want to feel the sand between their toes. If you're flying out of Edmonton's International Airport at any point till the end of 2022, we want to encourage you to use jetsetparking.com. You can save money right now by booking online. Just click EIA from the main page and then book your travel with at least 24 hours notice. Again, it can go all the way through to the end of the year. The promo code REALTALK gets you parking for just $7 a day. You will not find better airport parking at a price like that anywhere. The promo code REALTALK at jetsetparking.com gets you parking for $7 a day. Well, coming up in just a few moments, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. A bioethics professor, a bioethicist from UCal Berkeley, Dr. Jodi Halpern is going to join us. She's researching how people who experience serious health challenges, loss, and the stresses of something like a pandemic in the prime of their lives can cope, can bounce back. What's the key to recovery? I think this is a conversation that we're all going to be able to relate to a certain degree. Some of us probably more than others. Dr. Jodi Halpern coming up in just a few minutes. You know, every single week, our official research and strategy partners at Y Station produce our question of the week. We call it our Get Real question of the week. Our Patreon supporters get the full top line report, the full results in their email every week. And of course, we share the highlights of the results with you. Sam, let's get into it. We wanted to know where you were at with the top news stories of the week, of the month for that matter, across the country. In particular, the Conservative Party of Canada members of Parliament saying goodbye to now former leader Erin O'Toole. We asked you, were the Conservatives smart to axe EOT? 74% of you said no. 3 out of 4. By the way, 38% of you added pass the popcorn. You're curious to see how this works out for the official opposition, the party that wants to form government again. Let's take another look, another highlight here from our question of the week. 32% of Real Talkers surveyed say we are headed down a dangerous path of division. 32% of you believe that. Characterize it as a dangerous path. I'm not sure if we feel like that's lower or higher than we thought it might be. Here's another highlight. We asked you, will the Conservative Party of Canada survive this? You know, this tidal wave, right? Erin O'Toole leaving, dissension perhaps between MPs, a divide, whether or not they should be siding or not with the truckers, so to speak. The leadership campaign, a shot in the arm, yes, no. 46% of you say yes, the party will survive. 36% of you say it's limping. I mean, on the flip side, that means 54% of you suspect the party may not survive. Of course it's going to survive. Here's the final result we'll take a look at. Your predictions for the next Conservative leader. Now, keep in mind, really, nobody other than Pierre Poilievre has declared. So maybe no surprise that 53% of you believe that Pierre Poilievre will be the next Conservative Party leader. 18% of you, perhaps some of you tongue-in-cheek, suggest that there will not be another leader. The party won't exist. And 4% of you think that Peter MacKay will be the next leader of the Conservative Party of Canada. I'm curious to see whether or not Peter MacKay throws his hat into the ring. That'll be an interesting one to watch. Michael Chong, another interesting one. Jean Charest, would that float your boat? We asked you if there's anything else, your final thoughts. This is the part of the polling that I really like getting into, and you take a couple minutes to share your personal thoughts with us. One of you said, at some point it all went wrong. You know, we stopped caring about people. We became obsessed with our own small viewpoints. Seemed like everybody else could just go to hell. Both sides are guilty of this, but one side is far more guilty than the other. I don't know if conservative politics can survive this viewer said. At some point, the whole thing's going to implode. I just hope it doesn't take the country with it. Another one of you says we need a stronger left, not a resurgent right. Canadian society is changing. My children's generation is not into conservative values. Another said the Conservative Party's hard right wing is too out of touch with the average voter, but they comprise a good chunk of the mainly Western elected MPs. To win the leadership, you need to win those members, but the philosophy is not popular to win the country in an election. So I feel the party will eventually fracture into a progressive wing and a right-wing fringe group. That's an interesting comment. We always appreciate your participation in our question of the week. We're continuing our polling on the big headline stories this week. Different angles, different approaches, and of course, fresh questions from the team at Y Station. You can sign up to complete our question of the week right now on our website, ryanjesperson.com. Just go to Connect and then select Question of the Week, presented by our research and strategy partners at Y Station. Let's get into this. Sam, we're ready to rock here in UCal Berkeley. I've been looking forward to this conversation because this is something I think that as we, geez, I'm already offering qualifiers in the intro. I'm already offering a caveat here, and perhaps that's a perfect jumping off point for our next guest, Dr. Jodi Halpern. And that is, as we quote unquote move on from the pandemic, you could quite rightfully say to me, move on. This thing's not over yet. but I see around me. Look what's going on, for example, in Great Britain. Look what Boris Johnson's talking about. All mandates will be lifted. We see people moving on. Kids in schools. March 1st, there's a big day. Kids in schools had a big day too. Masks no longer mandatory. No more QR codes to get into restaurants. You're paying attention. You know what I'm getting at. So we're going to start talking about recovery in a way, and we'll have big high-level conversations about economic recovery, and we'll talk about social recovery. Can we mend these wounds? Can we heal? All the big high-level stuff. But what about on the personal level? What about on the self-care level? How do we understand the toll that a pandemic has taken on this, let alone people that have been ill, seriously ill with COVID-19, maybe people, the so-called long haulers living with long COVID symptoms? What about people that lost a loved one, that weren't able to properly say goodbye or properly mourn or properly celebrate that life? Dr. Jodi Halpern is a chancellor's professor in bioethics at UC Berkeley, researching how people who experience these serious health challenges in their prime of life and people who care for them can cope. Dr. Halpern, welcome to Real Talk, and thanks for making time for us.
Thank you, Ryan.
I guess I came into this a little bit supercharged, almost unintentionally, saying as we move on from the pandemic, and I realized even that could raise the ire of some folks. Where are you at with regards to processing where we're at as a society, and what do you gauge with regards to where people are at personally?
Well, I can bring my answer to you. In terms of the pandemic, I know as much as everybody else does about what's going to happen, obviously, in terms of variants, et cetera. But what I can share with you is what I've learned from 10 years of following people with life-changing losses and illnesses prior to the pandemic, and the stage that they're at about the 2-year mark, which turns out shockingly to be how long we've been in this pandemic. And at about the 2-year mark, where people are at is that they've been strenuously coping. They've been doing everything they can to use all their defense mechanisms to get through the pandemic or the phase of illness they're in, and they become burned out. And they're at a very critical inflection point or fork in the road in how they go on with their lives and how they psychologically can internalize what's happened with them and move on in a good way with their life.
When it comes to the toll that this takes on people, the pandemic, it's obviously, I think, probably a subjective conversation, right? For some folks, it will have impacted them in some way. For others, another way. Does the average person realize or recognize what they've been feeling, or the depth of what they've been feeling, or the significance in their own life?
Well, again, from 10 years of studying people with life-changing illnesses, cancer, heart disease, MS, my guess is that they don't yet recognize it, because people only start to recognize it after about 1.5 or 2 years. And what happens is people have been so busy coping and trying to deal and survive, take care of their families or function. And I can give you stories about that they really haven't been able to figure out, how does this really change the rest of my life? People use defense mechanisms, some of which are very healthy, like humor or altruism, helping neighbors, doing food shopping for neighbors. But they also use very unhealthy defense mechanisms like denial, blaming, avoiding, just to function. And after about 1.5 or so, all the grief they've been pushing down and all the sense that they've lost a big chunk of their life and that their life may never be the same again can well up. And the question is, what helps people do the grieving they need to do in a way that can be really healthy for them? And we don't have a lot of clues about that in our cultures. But one of the things that matters enormously is if people can internalize empathy for themselves and other people. And I've been studying empathy for 30 years, and I can talk about 2 different parts of what I mean by internalizing empathy. And I can tell you some stories about that.
Yeah, I would love to hear it. I know our audience would too.
Okay, so the 2 parts of internalizing empathy that are so critical is they're the same thing that you get from a really good therapist. But what's amazing is my research shows that people can sort of do it for themselves and each other. And the 2 parts are creating a feeling of safety, even with very difficult emotions, and being safe is very, very important. And the other part is developing curiosity, empathic curiosity about your expectations for your life and yourself. Are you pushing yourself too hard? Why? And that curiosity can be therapeutic. So let me tell you two stories if we have time.
Yeah, we do. You bet. We got
Okay.
we got all the time in the world, Doc. It's your schedule.
I love the long form. I love your
Right?
show, and I love the long
Yeah,
form.
you
it's,
bet.
it's so fantastic. But anyway, okay, two stories. The first story is about developing safety. First of all, where you get your safety may not be obvious. As I said, it can come from a therapist helping you grieve, but it can come in very different places. So this is the story of a woman named we'll call her Carly. So she had in her early at age 12, she was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, and she had very distant, preoccupied parents. So she had to really cope with it on her own, learn how to use insulin and take care of herself. And she became a very independent woman. I met her in her 40s, and she had a successful life, and she had relationships and a very successful way of being with people, but she didn't really trust anyone very deeply to take care of her or be there for her because she had had so much adversity and independence from early in life. And in her mid-40s, her diabetes became much worse. So it was like a new illness. What happens to some people with juvenile diabetes is it becomes very brittle. So the way she relaxed in life was she would go biking or hiking on her own. But suddenly her blood sugar would drop so quickly that she could pass out and die if she were alone. And 1 in 20 people, her doctor told her, can die with brittle diabetes at that stage. So he said, someone has to be with you all the time. You can't just be on your own, which she couldn't tolerate the thought. But what she wound up doing is getting a support dog. There are support dogs for diabetes. The way I saw her at the gym, doing a spin class where this beautiful black lab came into the class with her, laid down in front of her bike. And when she started to really sweat, the dog sat up and stared at her until she got off the bike and took a protein bar. So this dog became her constant companion and made her life very safe. Then the dog developed cancer, and she had to get treatment for the dog. And the only way she could afford to do that was by asking for help. So she reached out to a veterinary surgery area that she knew, and the top veterinarian. She reached out, they did free care for her dog. She went to stay near there, and people offered her housing. Someone else made meals for her. And she said this was transformative. She realized there was a social hold, that the world could be a safe place of people offering her help. And ever since then, and I've known her for years since, she and the dog volunteer at a cancer center where families meet, and she helps parents deal with their children with cancer and give the support she never received. So she's been psychologically transformed by the social hold that she found and the safety she found to deal with her illness.
Doctor, we'll recognize we're talking to you from the beautiful state of California, but let's take a look at some of the Canadian numbers here. I think that, just to provide some perspective, when we're talking about the number of people that'll be impacted to a certain degree, certainly by COVID. Look at this, 36,000 Canadians have died from COVID-19. Obviously, that number in the United States is much larger, but 36,000 loved ones lost from COVID-19. Almost 6 million, 5.89 million people worldwide have died from COVID-19. There have been more than 3.25 million cases of COVID-19 in Canada, and almost 500 million 425 million cases of COVID-19 worldwide. From almost any angle of approach, Doctor, this is an unprecedented challenge. Maybe aside from people walking planet Earth that would have memory of 1918 or, potentially, other obviously huge challenges. But this, for most people, is going to be, I think, a real challenge. And we're talking long-term challenge for a lot of people.
So let's talk about how are we going to create a social hold to deal with the grieving that we need to do. And even though everyone's COVID-19 was different, I see it as the whole world got awareness of mortality, whether you got it and lost a loved one or not. In one state, I talked to a group of women in Texas in a big corporation where 25% of them have lost a relative. So someone who's lost someone in the United States with 1 million deaths, close to 1 million deaths. And in Canada, that's still a big proportion of your 3.6 million people. So although you've done much better, frankly, but it's still, for each of those deaths, it doesn't matter who else has died, they've lost a loved one. How do you create a social hold? So let me say some of the things that we've been experimenting with that have been helpful. First of all, I started with the others, a task force at UC Berkeley. The School of Public Health here has 1,500 people in it, staff, faculty, students. And we had a group of 8 of us to reach out and really find out how 1,500 people were doing. And how do you do that? We wanted to have intimate conversations that really helped people. Well, early in COVID, a lot of people heard the scary figure that for each person with COVID, 3 other people get infected. So we decided if COVID can spread exponentially, social hold and empathy can spread exponentially also. So we asked each of the 8 of us to contact 3 people to have in-depth listening sessions. And then we would ask each of those 3 people to contact 3 people. We called it the power of 3. And we did it. And we reached all 1,500 people. But the question was, as we were training, what were we going to ask people? We didn't know each other. And it was the height of COVID deaths in the United States. So we were thinking, what do you say to someone when you call them and you don't know? Have they lost someone? Have they gotten sick? Are they home with school children trying to work and stressed out? What's going on in their life? Are they economically or the front line? Are they losing their job? Interestingly, we're a school of public health. The emphasis was so much on being positive that the younger folks in our group wanted to call people and say, how are you thriving? And they thought that would make people feel positive. But those of us that are older and have been in healthcare a long time, coach them. I've coached doctors and nurses for 30 years in how to have empathic curiosity. And I said, you absolutely have to start out just listening and saying to people, what's your COVID like? And just literally asking, because everyone's COVID is different. And nobody believed that would be therapeutic, but they tried it. We trained and they were open-minded. And it had an enormously therapeutic impact on our community. Just saying, what's your COVID been like? And just listening. It provides a hold and it helps people tell their story, often for the first time. And when people have to tell their story, they begin to grieve because they're with an empathic other. And sometimes it helps them even think about their story in a way that helps them see some new ways of helping themselves.
Dr. Jodi Halpern, our guest. I should mention your book. I mean, a really popular book, From Detached Concern to Empathy, Humanizing Medical Practice. It's been credited with catalyzing a wave of change in medical education. Of course, Doctor, you're working on a book right now, Remaking the Self in the Wake of Illness, presenting a model for post-traumatic growth. You talk about healthcare workers. This one stopped me in my tracks, this tweet just yesterday. It's a heartbreaker from the account RN_crit care, like a critical care registered nurse, tweeted a coworker ended their life after our shift the other day, didn't go home and shower, didn't change out of scrubs. I don't know if it was planned or spontaneous, but I do know we got the last living moments, and I don't know how I feel about that. Our broken team is shattered, right? It's heavy, and that's just one story. And
I have to say, this is a big part of my life, is getting those calls, because I mean, I'm actually getting tears in my eyes because I've been working with doctors and nurses the whole crisis. We've been writing about this. First of all, I don't know if people realize, I mean, we've lost, not to suicide, we've lost many to suicide, but we've lost to COVID, at least 115,000 doctors and nurses worldwide directly to COVID. We have a 75% rate of major depression or generalized anxiety in doctors and nurses right now in the United States. We have a 15% rate of suicidal ideation, which is 1,000 times higher than the general population normally is. So we're losing people. I mean, we're seeing a lot of people leave the profession and burning out, and we're seeing more divorce, a lot more substance use, but we're seeing people kill themselves. I got a call a week and a half ago about a nurse killing herself. And she was someone who was volunteering around the country to help. I really do tear up during crises. So it's an unbelievable cost. I don't think we'll see people provide healthcare with the same levels of enthusiasm for a long time unless we do the work that I have studied that does help, which is to give an enormous amount of social hold and empathy and care. I mean, people want to give it to healthcare workers. One thing that's helped the general population during COVID, I think you have that in Canada as well, as people go out on the street at 8 o'clock at night and in their neighborhoods. In the US, they've been doing that and clapping and thanking healthcare workers. I think it's helped people be with their own neighbors, do something with their neighbors and feel in it together. But we have to do a lot more financially, socially, give people real respite. People need respite.
Yeah. Jodi, it's like, you say that at the banging the pots and the pans, and that feels like 2 years ago. It kind of was 2 years ago. And then we've had the pendulum swing the entire other direction. Several months ago, we had a bunch of Maroons blockading and protesting at hospitals and harassing healthcare workers. I mean, we've seen it go both ways. I've got a personal friend, obviously won't identify her, but she's an ICU nurse. She told me a while ago, she said, and she didn't tell her friends, she didn't tell any of us, none of us knew it, but she says, I actually requested a transfer out of ICU. She said, I was just looking for a different career opportunity. This was pre-pandemic. It was like right around the time, like February of 2020. She had requested a transfer out of the ICU, just wanted a change of pace. Of course, they denied the transfer because they've needed ICU personnel more than ever before. And for the last 2 years, she's been there, committed to it, and committed to her calling as an ICU nurse. But she said when this thing's done, like when we're out on the other side of this, she's considering leaving the profession entirely. And I know that there are a ton of people that feel that way right now. It's a problem.
I think that we've long not, especially nurses, but doctors too, we've long underestimated how much internalizing. We want doctors and nurses not just stop being doctors and nurses at the end of the day. We want them to have a deep identification with their caring role. But we haven't trained them in the most important skill. Well, first of all, during COVID, we have overworked them, and I think that's crucial. And then they haven't had the time to mourn the deaths that they're involved in, and they haven't felt, and we didn't even protect them with enough safety equipment to protect their own lives and their families early on. So those are the big sins of COVID by our governments, at least in the US. I don't know if Canada was better with PPE, giving protective equipment early on. I mean, that was insane to ask people to risk their lives and their families' lives and not even give them the adequate equipment to protect themselves. But a longstanding issue that does help, not against tragedies like not equipping people, but one thing that does help is to recognize the difference in healthcare providers. This is what I've been doing for decades, between sympathy and empathic curiosity, and help them learn to be really interested in their patients, but to be able to have processes of using what they learn in a way that doesn't burn them out. And that's why, and we all need that now. We all need that. We need constructive projects we can do together. The city of LA has asked us to be involved in a citywide memorial for COVID that would be a dynamic memorial. It could be an experiential museum. But what we're doing to make it a really therapeutic process is we're proposing having focus groups throughout the whole city. We'll have them for nurses and doctors. We'll have them for some of the Black and Brown communities in LA that have been hit a lot harder. Mm-hmm. We'll have them for elders that have been isolated in assisted living. We'll have them for frontline workers. But then we'll also think, what do people specific, and we'll do, it's empathic listening that we do in those groups. And then what can we do to help the whole city put its arms around each other and create what my current book, Remaking the Self in the Wake of Illness, is about, which is creating a safe social hold. What can we do to create a safe social hold so everyone feels safe, so that grieving can be therapeutic?
Can I ask you a personal question to wrap here, Doc? What do you do for your own self-care? Like you're getting calls when people are lost to suicide. You're facilitating these groups. You're shouldering an immense amount of weight on behalf of other people. You're doing a lot of heavy lifting. What do you do to look after yourself?
Well, honestly, I'm lucky to have wonderful family and friends, although they have, my elder mother has been very ill during COVID. So it's wonderful, but involves additional caregiving. But I think honestly, the thing I think it's interesting. I picked to tell you the story about a woman with her dog, because I have the world's most, I have a therapeutic, I mean, she's not technically a therapeutic dog, but I have a dog that every member of my family finds we get so much love from, and we love to go out and take walks with her. So Nature can be a mother. A dog can be a mother. I mean, a mother in the sense of Mother Earth or a maternal holding environment. So I think being with my dog, and I think being in beautiful settings with my dog, in addition to friends, has made a huge difference.
I appreciate you taking the question. A lot of beautiful settings around University of California, Berkeley, I've heard. Congratulations on the upcoming book. People that want to learn more can go directly to your website. It's jodihalpern.com. You can learn more about her speaking opportunities, her research, her publications, the consulting that Dr. Halpern does. And of course, if you liked what you heard here on the show, make sure you share this link with people you know that might benefit from these wise words. Dr. Halpern, thanks for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Ryan.
You bet. What a good conversation from the author of From Detached Concern to Empathy, Humanizing Medical Practice, Jodi's upcoming book, Remaking the Self in the Wake of Illness. Sarah Hoyles is keeping an eye. In just a second, we'll check in with her on the other stories that are making news. Obviously, we're keeping an eye on rising tensions, what some are forecasting to be a Russian invasion of Ukraine. Two regions of Ukraine seeing tens and tens of thousands of Russian troops. You've likely seen the images on the news, tanks and heavy machinery coming in there, artillery trucks, etc. The international community responding. Vladimir Putin making some pretty inflammatory statements. Hoyle's keeping an eye on that. Plus, Donald Trump is back with a new social media platform. What? First, let's remind you about the sponsors that we're lucky to have on board. We're so grateful for their support. Every day, Real Talk happens because of teams like those at St. Albert and Sherwood Dodge. I was just checking out their websites. Check this out at SherwoodDodge.com. You go into specials. You can go to pre-owned specials or new ones. You always want to know the new specials. Look at this, a brand new, a 2022 Dodge Challenger SXT, $3,000, $3,500 off right now. A sale price of $39,288. Maybe you're more into the Jeep Wrangler, a brand new 2021 Wrangler Sport S. I like the sport trim. That's the fun one. Look at this, on sale, 5 G's off at $46,988. You can check out all those specials. I didn't know Jeep was making e-bikes. A Jeep e-bike? How cool is that, Sam? I'm like 7 G's for a Jeep?
Yeah, I'm looking at this here, and you get the Wrangler, and you got the trucks, and you got that kind of stuff, and I'm being like, I want the bike.
I want the e-bike.
Yeah.
I'm with you. If you have a Jeep e-bike, does that make it? I can do more than other e-bikes? Probably. You can do the mountain crawling.
That's how it works.
Trail riding and all that kind of cool stuff. You'll find that right now at SherwoodDodge.com. Our friends at Eden Landscaping want to remind you they are pros at bringing your outdoor space to life. Does your backyard space need a little shot in the arm? Could you do so much more? Does it have so much potential untapped? Now's a perfect time to check in with Mike and his team. LandscapeEdmonton.ca is where you can view their services, what they do. I mean, you need excavation, retaining walls, water features, outdoor kitchens. They've done it all over 20 years, and they're proud of their return customers and their referrals. That's Eden Landscaping at LandscapeEdmonton.ca. Our friends at Local Waste invite you to connect with them today for a bin. I saw a Local Waste bin near the house the other day. It was a new one near our house. I was pretty proud of my neighbors. I don't know what their project is. It hasn't started yet. Maybe it's siding, maybe it's roofing. I don't know what they're doing. Maybe it's a basement purge, getting ready for their spring cleaning. All I know is that I saw that nice 10-footer, that green Local Waste bin outside their house. Of course, you'll also see a bunch behind restaurants and small businesses, even the big malls and hotels. They do it all at localwaste.ca. Sarah Hoyles, the editorial producer of this program, at her home studio. We noticed, by the way, in our morning production meeting today, a new setup, a new background. You obviously did a little tweaking over the weekend, new home office.
It was out of necessity. Ranger can be quite vocal at times.
We didn't mind.
I did. And so, I just moved back to my office, and that way it's a little more quiet back here. Although now he's over here snoring.
Oh, that's okay.
I don't know.
That's okay. I thought, and how about Dr. Halpern talking about the mental health benefits of for a lot of people, like therapy dogs, either official or unofficial so-called therapy dogs. There's is an unofficial one, but I'll say with our Moses, the 9-year-old boxer whose snoring has ramped up as he's gotten older, there's something about the snoring of a dog. It's kind of like the purring of a cat in a way. It's very calming.
Absolutely. Like if there's ever a human snoring, I don't mind elbowing them in the ribs. But when it's a dog, I'm like, that's so cute. I
Yes.
love it. Don't
Yes.
stop. It brings me comfort.
Yeah, I live with the most gracious human on planet Earth with regards to how she manages snoring. She does the, like, my buddy Chivers calls them schmirkles, like the little circle in the middle of your back, and she's like, sweetheart, you're snoring. I know other people get like punched in the head from their loved ones. They get kicked, right where it hurts. So yeah, I appreciate that. Hey, it always feels weird to transition from clowning around and joking around. We haven't seen each other for a few days to get into like the most serious stuff, like impending war. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. But the signs aren't good with regards to this Russian, I guess you call it an invasion of Ukraine. What do you want to call it? But it's a dynamic story, Sarah, a developing story that changes by the hour. What's going on right now?
Well, talking to Dr. Halpern, the idea that, everyone's kind of had it up to here with the pandemic and people are losing their shit. Like they are no longer able to actually cope anymore. All of their coping mechanisms are frayed. They're done. And I feel like that's happening on a global scale. So yes, Russia, they have sent troops into 2 independent areas. These are areas that, basically said that, we're not a part of Ukraine. We're not interested.
They're kind of separatist states, right? In a way?
That's correct. Yeah, they broke away from the Ukrainian government back in 2014. They proclaimed themselves independent people's republics. And then just now, Putin has said, come on in. You're part of Russia now. And now they've sent troops into there. It's known as the Donbass region.
Yeah.
So with this happening, 2 major developments have been that Germany, they've connected with a key gas pipeline, which is supposed to be big bucks for Russia and very helpful for Germany and other parts of Europe. And Germany has said, we're not going to certify this. This is not going to happen now. The situation has fundamentally changed, is what the Chancellor of Germany has said.
Okay.
The other major development is that the UK, Boris Johnson, has put major sanctions on 5 Russian banks and 3 high net worth individuals. So looking at where's the money?
Yeah, we'll see. And we'll see what happens with, obviously the United States. Everybody's going to be watching the giant that is the United States. And interesting to hear the United States ambassador or the representative to the United Nations talking yesterday, saying that, Vladimir Putin is essentially seeking to discredit or lop off at the knees, my words, not theirs, the role of the United Nations and all this. So Russia is certainly a superpower to a certain degree and in certain contexts undeniably. And Vladimir Putin, an unpredictable leader to a certain extent. So this is a story we'll follow. And, of course, we'll be talking to expert voices this week and the like. By the way, Sam, also just keeping an eye on the monitor up here. And we've got developing news as well. This is just breaking news on one of these bail hearings in Ottawa. These are the key organizers of this convoy. Kind of an interesting one, Sam. Hey, so Pat King
is going to be Pat King is facing 4 charges, I believe, and he's going to be in court soon. The bigger one is Tamara Leach has been denied bail.
Yeah. That is a big one, Hoyles. Of course, she's essentially, and nobody ever really mentions this, by the way. She's like has an official position with the Maverick Party, right? She's like an executive with the party. This is essentially the federal Canadian Separatist Party, the federal Separatist Party. But Hoyles, this is an interesting one. She was the fundraiser behind this whole thing. And this was the GoFundMe that got shut down for like $10 million, and then they had the other one on the other fundraising site. I can't remember. Give, Send, Go, right? She had that tearful video. I don't know if you saw it. This was a few days ago now, where she sort of was talking to her supporters or her followers, whatever you want to call them, on social media, and she was saying, I think, she's sort of crying and saying, I think this is looking like I'm going to go somewhere where I'm going to get 3 square meals a day, and that's okay, and kind of coming out with the martyr type complex on this one, but denied bail. That's an interesting one. There's about to be some accountability for some of the key organizers of this occupation in Ottawa and the convoy related stuff. Another story.
Well, I think also with her arrest, like that was a video of her being put under arrest. The taken very gently, very lots of courtesy being paid to her. So not being roughed up. So
can I say that I think that's a really
not that
good
I want
thing.
that to happen.
Exactly, right? And like I want to say that's a good thing. I understand people are annoyed in all kinds of ways, and everybody seems to be annoyed with everybody, and there's a lot of people. And I recognize I'm wading into a gray area here, but a lot of people were saying, well, let's just get bulldozers from CFB Wainwright and just run them through the Coots border blockade, and let's open up the border. Let's remind everybody, or let's just see, cops barrel in with tasers and pepper spray and all this stuff in downtown Ottawa. And I just think, because I think we need to have a decent conversation about how we want to see protests managed and policed and handled in Canada, and it is not a good thing. I understand you're going to say, what about taking liberties and shutting down a city for 3 weeks, and the police were caught flat-footed, and people have all kinds of opinions and observations, but it's not a good thing, generally speaking, to see protesters met with batons and shields and tear gas. I don't think that's the Canada that we want either.
No, but I think we have to realize that that is the Canada that we have if you are Black or brown or Indigenous.
Fair.
So it's just worth noting. And yes, I'm not saying because this happened to Black and brown and Indigenous folks that white folks should, or anybody else should, receive the baton and be unnecessary force being used against them. But I would like to see it be fairly used across the board and withheld across the board.
Totally fair comment. Totally fair comment. Absolutely 100%. You're like nodding. Sam's like, yes. Where do you land on this one?
I think that it's like, when I was watching the breakup of the Ottawa blockade play out, the big thing that kind of sort of kept coming into my mind is like, well, this is how it should be. And what I sort of mean by that is echoing kind of what you and Sarah said, is like, I really hope the videos of the police slowly moving a line and slowly moving in and making just sort of pinpointed arrests and always leaving a method of egress. They didn't kettle anybody. They always gave the people a way out. I think the response was too late. I think it should happen 2 weeks before that, for sure. But when it finally happened, the next time that there is a BLM protest, the next time that there is an LGBTQ issues protest, the next time that there is an Indigenous protest, I sincerely hope photos of how the Ottawa police and who joined the Ottawa police are held up as the example of, this is the only way to use police to break up a protest.
Yeah. I wonder if there will be hot tubs at the BLM protests
and that it is possible. Like, I think this is exactly it, that Ottawa police have shown, no, it is possible. It is possible to break up a protest without being major amounts of force. It is possible. And the fact that we need to see this now to prove that what was done in the past is not okay is kind of, well, garbage.
It's garbage. This story that you've plugged in here, and I'm glad you did, because a big part of your job, no pressure oils, is to make us all look smart when we're standing around the water coolers or talking to our friends. We always want to know the details on all the stories that matter. I have not been paying any attention to this new Truth social app that former reality TV star and former president of the United States Donald Trump has launched, but it's obviously leading the app downloads over the past couple of days. No surprise there. I mean, tens of millions of people voted for the guy again. But what's the deal here? What's this? They want to circumvent other apps or other social media platforms?
It's called Truth Social, and the ads say follow the truth. Okay. And it was launched by Donald Trump and his folks yesterday, not surprisingly, on President's Day in the States. We had Family Day in Alberta and in other parts of Canada, but yesterday was President's Day in the States. So, hey, that seemed like the perfect opportunity to launch this social media app. And it is to, give the middle finger to Facebook and Twitter and everybody that banned him after the January 6th insurrection that he basically fueled and encouraged and all that jazz. So it's interesting, as you mentioned, it was the top downloaded app on Apple Store.
Of course.
I mean,
probably by a mile.
Like,
of course.
Everybody loves him, goes and downloads it. But then there are all the people that hate him and journalists and people that are like giving it, I got to know what's going on. It's it's not surprising. And then there's also the hate follows, right? You're going to just follow it just because you hate it.
Hey, and I encourage as many people as possible to hate follow Real Talk. There's nothing wrong with the hate follow. We will take hundreds of thousands of hate follows and hate downloads. That's absolutely no problem. Sam puts up the talk to us. Like, send your hate mail to talk@ryanjesperson.com. That's actually a perfect tee up for local waste. We've already done it, though. Trash talk. You can send us your trash talk anytime. Hoyles, obviously, this could be a precursor to a potential campaign quote unquote retake the White House, which of course a lot of people will be speculating that's exactly going to be Trump's plan. So we'll see where this goes from here.
Yeah, and like not just necessarily his run, but all of the candidates that he wants to support and encourage, and kind of wield his power that way.
That's my 6 o'clock news anchor impression, where you just you can't have a take, you can't have an opinion on it. In this case, I don't want to think about it, so I just say we'll see where it goes from here. Just stack the papers, pile them up on the desk. We'll see where it goes from here. Sarah Hoyle's already working on tomorrow's show. Very much looking forward to that. Of course, we're going to follow up on a lot of these stories that are developing, including Russia's invasion of Ukraine. The conversation will continue through the week. Our friends at Park Power, this came up earlier. Katherine O'Toole talking on the show about natural gas rebates. I know a lot of people right now are going, oh my gosh, our utilities bills, right? You're getting the bills now from that big cold snap. And some of you are going, our natural gas, our electricity bills are like double what we're used to, double what they were. You know, I'm not seeing a lot of people. I don't see a lot of people that are locked into the fixed rate with Park Power complaining. Parkpower.ca is where you can find your friendly local utilities provider. My brother down in Calgary, he goes, I got to make a switch. And I go, well, go to Park Power. He goes, I'm in Calgary. I said, yeah. Across the province, internet, electricity, natural gas across the province of Alberta. Park Power would love to do business with you. You can compare rates today. You can learn more about the fixed rate, the variable rate, and don't forget, when you take your business to Park Power, make sure you use the promo code 2022-Real Talk. 2022-Real Talk gets you $70 off your first bill from Park Power. Our friends at Dairy Queen have a brand new burger menu out. They've got the signature stack burgers that everybody gets excited about, the bacon 2-cheese deluxe, the original cheeseburger, the loaded steakhouse burger, that's only if you're not messing around, the mushroom cheeseburger, and their flamethrower burger, available from single to double to the big time triple. You'll find them all at Dairy Queens of Northwest Edmonton and Sherwood Park. That's Palisades, Nemeo, Newcastle, Westmount, and Baseline Road. Friesen Brothers wants you to keep in mind we're just about a week away. The first of the month means 15% off all grocery purchases over $75. 16 locations across the province of Alberta. Friesen Brothers has been proudly family-owned and operated for more than 65 years. Alberta grown, Alberta owned means family comes first, with only the freshest local produce, protein, and so much more. 10% off, 15% off on the first of the month at Friesen Brothers across Alberta. Now, every week on our first day of the broadcast week, of course, it's a short week with the Family Day long weekend in the books. We hope you had a great one. Our friends at Kuby Energy, with renewable energy, give us an opportunity to focus on the positives, to express ourselves, to share our joys, to talk about those random acts of kindness. We call them positive reflections. An email like this one from MJ absolutely fills our bucket. MJ says, this show makes a difference. Says, please keep talking real talk. I'm finding comfort and clarification from this program. It's answering questions I didn't even know I had. It's covering topics thoroughly and giving well-rounded views. With rights come responsibilities. MJ says, I've realized I have much work to do. To the entire team, have the very best rest of the day. That from MJ. Man, oh man, that made my day. I think thousands of people should hear this one. How about this one from TM? This goes in an interesting direction, but I wanted to slot it into positive reflections. TM says, thank you for your recent panel, the February 11th panel, touching on Black History Month. A very informative and interesting conversation. One of your guests said, put yourself outside your comfort zone. Could mean reading a book about a different ethnicity or someone's different perspective, and I understood what that guest meant, and two books came to mind. Number one, when I was 12 years old, I first read The Diary of Anne Frank. The book had an enormous effect on me and helped me frame a sense of empathy at an early age. The second book that impacted me in a major way was The Color Purple. It informed me about maybe certain similarities in my life with characters in the book. My mom had a close friend who had survived physical abuse at the hands of her husband. She fled to our house on multiple occasions. When I read The Color Purple, I was able to understand some of the dynamics of these abusive relationships. But I also read about prejudice and how characters suffered simply because of the color of their skin. Of course, I could empathize, not because I knew as a white woman what it would be like to suffer from racial prejudice, but because I could relate from one human to the other about unfairness of burdens that some bear. Empathy does not come from understanding differences. It comes from understanding how similar all of us are to each other. That from TM. And thanks for tuning in, TM. And this one from Bonnie. We'll end with this. Bonnie says, over this Family Day weekend, I found out a dear friend is an anti-vaxxer. Maybe not an anti-vaxxer, like she's not militant, obviously. Bonnie says, I had no idea for the past year or so, but she hasn't got her COVID shots, and she told me she doesn't intend to. I found out as we were spending some much-needed quality time together. We haven't seen each other face-to-face in ages, and I was so grateful to have a chance to get out on our cross-country skis and enjoy this beautiful winter weather with a good friend. So why is this a positive reflection? Although I'm still processing my feelings about her unwillingness to do what I think is the right thing, not just for her, but for everybody around her, this weekend was the first time all of this debate and so-called division got personal for me. I was a bit stunned when I first heard. I hadn't expected it, but I treated her with the same love and goodwill I always have through 30-plus years of friendship. We spoke calmly and respectfully, and while neither of us changed our minds, yet I'm still hoping for her, I left with the feeling that maybe it will be possible to put Canada back together after all. That from Bonnie. Thanks for sharing, Bonnie. You can share your positive reflections with us anytime. And don't forget, kubyenergy.ca is where you can learn more about what our good friends are doing to help Canadians pursue their sustainable energy goals. Coming up on the show tomorrow, updates on these international developments we've talked about. And for dads-to-be like me, we're going to talk to the first male doula in Western Canada. That's Alikan Sumar is going to join us for a conversation on how to embrace your role. In the meantime, make it a great Tuesday. Thanks for liking and subscribing to what we're doing, and we'll talk to you soon.